how you can watch a Broadway play from the comfort of your own couch. Plus, we have your reactions to a brand new study that ignited a whole lot of headlines about the mental health of American moms. I'm Jenna, and this is Smarter News. Welcome to our weekly Anything But Politics segment, where we talk about anything but politics because it seems like politics are in everything. And we just need a moment to take a deep breath. Plus, it's summer. And as you may notice, I'm in a different location than I usually am. For those of you watching on YouTube or on social media, you may even hear different sounds in the background if you're listening on podcast. And this is the adventure that we're on together, which is called Summer Break for my children. And so over the next several weeks, you never know where I might pop up next. It'll be all over the place as I'm trying to be both a present mother and build a news platform that's creating a solution in news. So thank you for being on this journey with us and for your patience, as you never know what's going to happen next. I am going to tell you about something next that I think could be fun for you to do this weekend. This is a little bit of a public service announcement along with some personal storytelling as well. There is a live event that's going to be streamed on CNN. It is a Broadway play called Good Night and Good Luck. And it's a play that is connected to journalism, which I'll talk to you about in just a moment, but it's going to be streaming on CNN on Saturday night. You can watch the Broadway play, and then there's going to be a conversation about journalism and the state of journalism afterwards. And you may be here at Smarter News because you're curious about journalism. And so I thought this would be important to flag for you. The notion of the play, and I actually was able to see it in New York City just a few weeks ago. There's all sorts of conversations about it because George Clooney is the star of it. It's been a very popular play on Broadway, especially during a time when there's been questions about how Broadway is doing, especially post-pandemic. And there's been a few big hits on Broadway recently with some big Hollywood stars, and this is one of them. The play is about a specific time in American history and a very specific slice of a story that took place in the 1940s, 1950s. It's ironic we're talking about this in the first week of June because we know June 6th is the anniversary of D-Day, which was a major battle, the start of a major operation that turned the tide in World War II and led to the defeat of Nazi Germany. And what rose after that, though, is also an important part of the story. First of all, the war didn't just end after that operation, but in the years that followed, you had a world, and including the United States, trying to figure out the path forward, how to prevent something like that from happening again. So it's with that background setting that you have this very popular broadcast journalist, Edward R. Murrow, who has a very popular show in America, sort of a news magazine show at the time. And you have a senator by the name of Joe McCarthy, who is at the center of what has now been referred to and was referred to as the Red Scare. This was a time in America where there were concerns about communists infiltrating different parts of American culture and government. And by the way, there were evidence of spies, of communist spies, some of which who were executed during this time period. But this time, it was known as well for the rise of suspicion for Americans with friends and family. You know, it was a time of great questioning where there were sort of these questions being asked about different people or different industries or different sectors of society, and whether or not there were communists there. Is there communist undercurrent that we're not aware of, that we need to be more vigilant about? Senator Joe McCarthy was at the center of this, and there were great critiques of him then, and obviously in the aftermath of this, of stoking this tension and a feeling of conspiracy when maybe the evidence wasn't there. Eventually, in this time period, by the way, President Eisenhower steps in, the Senate, Senator Joe McCarthy's colleagues step in, censure him, kind of shut down his investigations. But in this period of time, this journalist, Edward R. Murrow, comes out and is doing these reports, starts delivering reports, highlighting what Senator McCarthy is doing. It's really a play of the back and forth between these two individuals and how a newsroom handles this controversy, the relationship between journalists and government, the suspicion that was happening on all sides of all different people. And it was a very interesting play to watch. I really enjoyed it. I loved seeing the newsroom it took you back in time. And in fact, it's going to be amazing to see this on television. It takes you back in time and you can see what feels like a working newsroom. Even though I wasn't working in journalism in the 1950s, there were things and behaviors that I saw on stage that were very reminiscent of working newsrooms that I was in. Now, in the newsrooms I was in, there was no smoking. There was a lot of smoking that was happening on stage and drinking. In fact, they seemed to use real cigarettes. I walked out of the theater just completely with the stench of cigarettes. So you really felt like you were in the newsroom while this play was happening. But there are some interesting questions that this play brings up. And I don't want to give too much away, but something to think about, and what I was thinking about, is the tension between advocacy and journalism, and how important it is for journalists to remain journalists and for advocates to be advocates. And that it's very tough when you try to cross the two of them. And this line and how it was walked in this play brought up all sorts of questions for me. Again, I don't want to give too much away. I want you to be able to experience it. But my point of view on journalism is that you are a light for good when you simply do good work. If you report the news and you report it factually and you show people accurately what's happening, then people can make up their own minds on any issue, whether it's voting, whether it's legal. It's about illumination. It's not about advocacy or having a point of view from the get go. Edward R. Murrow, in his magazine like show, has an opportunity to start with a lead line that has a little bit more of a perspective. You see this in, for example, CBS 60 Minutes. So it's a magazine show. It has a story that it's trying to tell based on its reporting. Sometimes it can feel, though, that there's editorial that gets mixed up in that.
The actions of the junior senator from Wisconsin have caused alarm and dismay amongst our allies abroad and given considerable comfort to our enemies. And whose fault is that? Not really his. He didn't create this situation of fear. He merely exploited it, and rather successfully. Cassius was right. The fault, dear Brutus, is not in our stars, but in ourselves. Good night, and good luck.
I'd be very curious what your thoughts are about this play and how this particular time period is portrayed, and what you think about the actions of journalists, the actions of lawmakers, and how they intersect. There obviously are a lot of parallels to today in the way that we're talking about the press and the general dissatisfaction of the public with the press and politicians. And so there are parallels to sort of pull of this. In the middle of this theater, there was this moment I just want to share with you. I thought was very interesting. I've been a, a New Yorker for some time period, a very important critical time period in my life. I lived in New York City. I love New York. I lived there for 13 years. It's where my journalism career really launched. I still love New York City so much. I have been in situations in New York City and other places around the country where there's all sorts of political jokes. And there are different people at the receiving ends of those jokes, Democrats and Republicans. It doesn't really matter, right? It happens all the time. There was a reference on stage, there's a particular line where an actor delivers a line that feels like it was speaking about that particular time, but you could see that the inference is really meant to be a dig at President Trump. And that's how the theater reacted. There was a lot of laughter about this. And I sat there thinking to myself, so interesting, because I feel like that joke could have been the same exact joke that was told in 2016 and 2017 in New York when I still lived there. It felt almost like I was in a time warp. And because of the way that this play talked about journalism and the way it used footage at the end of modern journalism, I left the theater wondering for the very first time if New York is a leading place for media and journalism, or whether or not that torch has been passed now with the rise of independent media, and whether or not New York is still as relevant as it has been in the past. I don't think it'll ever not be important. But whether or not it's trailblazing and pioneering is another question. So I'll leave you with that, a little bit of talk about that, but I'll be curious your thoughts, and especially with, I know your interest in history and journalism, and I think you could really enjoy this play. And I'm excited to actually watch it. When I was in the theater, I thought this would be amazing to see on film, and I think it will be. So I encourage you, if you have interest in it, to check it out. Okay, let's talk a little bit about this study that I told you about last week. It was a big study that was published that showed the condition of specifically American mothers. And just kind of bottom lining the study, it took a look at American moms between a certain period of time, a little bit before the pandemic and a little bit after the pandemic, or the beginning of the pandemic. And basically, what it found is that there was declining mental health responses by American moms almost immediately after 2016. And the declining mental health of those that said that they were in excellent mental health was not really tied to the pandemic. It wasn't really tied to socioeconomic status. It wasn't really tied to anything that would seem particularly obvious, region of the country, a particular race. It seemed to be very widespread that American moms were saying that they're struggling with their mental health. And also congruently, it showed that American dads were not feeling exactly the same way. There were some declines, but not as serious as American moms. And the researchers didn't have a reason for why. They had a laundry list of reasons it could be. And they said that they wanted to explore more. The laundry list included things like climate change or gun violence, which also can be a political term, by the way, used in that way, just violence in general, the economy, all sorts of things. But they didn't know. So I asked you, what do you think are the reasons for this? What do you think is going on here? And I got a whole bunch of different responses, and I'm going to read a few of them to you. Uh, what I was so struck by is how thoughtful your responses were and how much they resonated with me, a mom of three children and a dog. So basically four. No, no, no. Three children and a puppy. And how there's a lot to think about in this topic. I want to start off by playing a response. I invited you to share a voice memo. And I want you to listen to what Brittany had to say. And I also want you to listen to what's happening in the background as she's saying it. But her wisdom here felt very profound. So let's listen to Brittany.
Hi, my name's Brittany. I have two theories about the decline of mental health for mothers in the United States. I think one thing is definitely social media and how we can compare ourselves to all of the picture perfect moments of every other mom across the world. And that can create a lot of anxiety if we are thinking that our lives need to look like all of the beautiful moments of everybody else's life. I think the other reason is the busy bored tension, where we are always busy playing with kids, disciplining kids, cleaning up after kids, teaching kids, always busy, but we're also bored because it's not very mentally stimulating. And we also do not get to see a product at the end of our day or at the end of our work week for our motherhood. The thing that we are working for in motherhood is so long term. We are raising human beings, so it's a very noble thing to be doing. However, I do think that it can really play on somebody's mental health when you don't get to see that product at the end of the day, and you do feel busy all of the time, but also somewhat bored.
Brittany, I mean, what amazing analysis and so clear. And also with the child in the background saying, Mom, Mom, where she can't even get through her one voice note of the day. She's just trying to get to the end of the voice. I related to that so much. What Brittany said really brings up some interesting points. This idea of comparison, which is around us all the time in a way that was not true in previous generations. It just wasn't. It wasn't that comparisons didn't happen, but every single time I pick up my phone and if I'm peeking at social media, there's something there that's making me wonder about my own choices. And that's what it is. Not even just about a comparison. It's like, oh, look at what this person's doing. Look at where they're going. Look at how they're dressing. Look at their children. Look how they're packing their lunches. Look at how, and in a previous time, we would have our community to compare ourselves to. And of course, magazines and all those sorts of celebrity culture was around us, but not in this way where it's in the palm of your hand and you're looking at it right in the middle, right in front of your face. And it feels so incredibly daunting sometimes. The other part of that Brittany's comments, is about boredom and that lack of stimulation or that lack of feeling a win at the end of the week. Uh, that the way that Brittany was able to articulate that was so gracious because she's not saying she doesn't want to be around her children. Just that feeling of feeling not as maybe stimulated as one would like to. And I actually have a really interesting note from a mom that's a little further ahead than some of us to share on that as well, because it is important to have some perspective. So let me just read a little bit of that. It's from Sharon. She says, great words at the end of your Mother's Day quick hit. My youngest of 2 is about to turn 18, and the young kid years are so difficult. The energy demanded to stay afloat during a packed schedule, recalibrate, and attempt sanity is unreal. But then all the hard work investing in little ones pays off. They become extremely capable, and poof, it's not nearly as trying as the pressure cooker days. Continuing the analogy, there's space to enjoy a satisfying meal that was decades in the making. To you, hang in there. And I appreciate that, Sharon. And I would say that to Brittany too, to all of us, hang in there. It is important to have that perspective. And we've all heard that the years go by really quickly, but it's hard when you're in the middle of it. I remember playing with my kids and building Smarter News simultaneously, sometimes in the same room at the same time, which doesn't feel good to feel torn, and yawning. Like I couldn't stop yawning. And feeling terrible that I didn't feel as engaged playing these games with my children as I thought I was supposed to feel. And now I can see, oh, I'm able to connect with them a little bit different as they're a little bit older in a way that feels really good. But at the time, I didn't feel that when they were 1 or 2 years old. And by the way, I love those ages. It was just really, really hard. Also, carrying a whole bunch of different size diapers around with you, very difficult. Here's a note from Candy. She says this, I think the mental health of moms is low because we are being squeezed by all the responsibilities we have. Many of us work and take care of our families. I feel like it's a constant battle trying to keep up with everything. Meeting everyone's needs and balancing family, first priority, and work. I do need a job is really hard. Then throw in aging parents who need attention. And did I mention all the activities and cleaning the house and grocery shopping and cooking and laundry, etc.? There's just too much to do and we really want to do it all. But realistically, that's just impossible and exhausting. Thanks for listening, Candy. Candy, I resonate with this too. And this was a response that we got a lot on social media. It's too much to handle. What's funny about reading this, Candy, is as I'm preparing to film this podcast for you, I was upstairs in the kitchen and I was looking around and thinking to myself, okay, if I could just get this podcast filmed, the kids are out of the house, then do I make the choice to sit down and do some writing that I really want to do? Or do I clean up this living room because I cannot focus? I cannot focus at all. It's so chaotic. I don't think I can sit here and not try to clean. But if I clean, then I miss the time to do the writing and then they're back and then I love them. But then I also want to do these other things. And it feels like a constant triage all the time. And listen, I know we're all grateful to have a home, have a roof over our heads, to have things to clean up. There's that perspective too. In the middle of it, it's hard when you're trying to balance all of this. Here's another one that we have. This is from Caitlin. And I thought this was also a very interesting response. She was saying that really the pandemic was very difficult for her. She has 4 kids, 10, 8, 6, and 2 months. So she took a big break. And she said part of the reason for that was that she felt and her husband felt that they needed a second to catch their breath and they needed a little bit of support. She says this, as moms in America, we are not set up for success. Our culture trains us to have the mindset of handling and doing it all ourselves. And then we feel completely depleted and inadequate when we can't. Having babies and raising children was never something intended to be carried out alone. We need a strong community around us to do well, to share the burdens and encourage one another. I believe this wholeheartedly. What wisdom, Caitlin, again. So true. And it's difficult to admit that you need help. I've had help in different ways over the last several years. I've never had family nearby. So sometimes help would be a college babysitter. Sometimes it would be a nanny. Sometimes it's taken a lot of different forms. In the times that after I was in corporate America, I tried to structure my day so at least a portion of my day was spent with my children. And then maybe nap time or another portion of the day could be spent with a babysitter so I could do some work. And it was great to have that freedom. But not having family nearby, not having a community, and sometimes feeling ashamed to say that you need the help, that you need to hire someone to help you is also just another calculation that's happening in your brain that you're giving emotional or mental energy to that can be really draining. Again, could be spent doing creative things, solving the world's big problems. Instead, I'm like, oh, gee, I hate to admit that I need this babysitter more than 10 hours a week. What do I do? This is all part of kind of the brain drain that can also make you feel exhausted and not feel good about yourself. Okay, here's one. This person did not want to give her name because she felt like what she was saying was controversial. And I understand that. But SL, I'm so glad that you wrote in because I think this is also important to think about. She has 4 young children too, 10 to 3 years old. We're all kind of in the same time frame, a lot of us. She said this, I actually think the decline in mental health is exactly opposite to what researchers are thinking. I think it's too much access to therapy and the extreme increase of focus on mental health that has led to the decrease in mental health lately. Someone shared the book Bad Therapy with me, and it was such an eye-opening and life-changing book for me and my own mental health, the health of my marriage, and helping my kids with their own struggles. Sometimes too much of something is actually not a good thing. And I think it is what's happening to our mothers and our children. More than ever, we have easy, unlimited access to mental health experts, she said in quotes. Social media comes back. And more kids are in therapy now more than ever before. And it just keeps getting so much worse across the board. If you haven't listened to the book Bad Therapy yet, it's worth a listen. Also, thank you for telling me to listen to it and not read it, because let's just face it, the pile of books next to my bed are as tall as me. But I love them. I keep buying them, but also good to listen to it. So she said she felt like it would be unpopular to share that, but I think that I think we can appreciate that perspective, can't we? So one other one from Megan Rose, she said this: the increase in cost of living, the culture of giving children the opportunity to do it all, such as club sports, even the expectation of self care, is all more demands on the mom role. Moms are overwhelmed, overworked, and undersupported. My own mother in her mid 40s was a stay at home parent with a house cleaner, kids that got to ride public school transportation, and many more open hours in her day. I have none of these things and a lot more demand. This is due to an unrealistic expectation we can do it all in an unrealistic culture of lots of demand, specifically on women. Yeah. Also, doesn't that, I'm thinking that was a little help, even the help of a school bus picking up your kids. If and I don't mean to be inserting myself in these conversations with you. I just want to tell you how much I relate and resonate with you of what you're saying here. If I had a school bus that took my child to school, first of all, I would be sad because I do love being with my children in the car. We have a lot of good conversations. However, it would save me at minimum 8 to 10 hours a week because my commute is so long with the kids. So there's that. There's that. Megan Rose said this, and again, this is what she was speaking about with not having the support. Thanks for asking this question. You are a light in the overwhelming news media, and I appreciate your curiosity about the news. Listen, this is part of the reason why I created Smart News. It was specifically to help American women, because I felt that no matter how hard you are working and no matter the different lifestyle choices you may be making, the news was another stressor. And that to me is ridiculous. In a culture and a society that says that we embrace a free press, you should have the press at your fingertips. It should be so easy. You should not have to work for the news. You're working for so many other things. So if I could just bullet point a few things for you, because that's where my expertise is, then how that would lighten your load a little bit. That's the whole point of Smarter. That was one of the whole inspirations behind Smarter News is we talk about how we care about women so much, but we do very little to actually support them in a way that's meaningful in their life and not say, you know what, maybe you should try this. No, she doesn't need to try anything else. She's good. She just needs some support. So if I can help you with the news and work through that, that's what I'm trying to do with a very strategic purpose. So um, those are your responses. Thank you for sending that feedback. Thank you to Brittany for the audio message. Thank you to everybody for the messages. But you can see it's so much better to hear your voices. You're so much better than me trying to read it from you. So, like, as you're thinking about things, send me a voice memo. It's great. We'll include you in the podcast. I mean, this is your moment. You get the stage, man. Like, let's go. So thank you for that. I think this is a continuing conversation and one I'm curious about having more. So thank you for that. I'm going to leave you with some positive news though. Have you seen this new study that's been floating around the internet saying that coffee is good for women and it's going to lead to longer lives? Have you seen this? First of all, there's a study like this on coffee, chocolate, or wine, periodically throughout every year. But I was like, okay, let me take a closer look at this. It was even written up by the New York Times. It is not necessarily the gold standard for studies as far as like peer reviewed, all those different things, but it's still interesting. It basically looked at just under 50,000 women who worked as nurses, and they tracked them from the 1970s on. And then those that were still alive in 2016 and were in good health, meaning they had no chronic conditions of any kind, uh, were asked again about like what was the similarity. And there were several thousands of these women, like what actually stood out. And what they found is that it was coffee consumption was one of the things. They can't say it's cause and effect, but was one of the things that they noticed. And it wasn't just caffeine consumption, because those that drank tea, which wasn't a ton, and those that drank things like Coca-Cola, that has caffeine in it, didn't have the same benefits. It was those that were actually drinking coffee. And in some cases, it was those who consumed the most coffee, which was 7 8-ounce cups of coffee a day. So it's very clear. The researchers say, it's right up in the New York Times, do not suddenly start drinking 7 cups of coffee so that you live longer. The point was that it's part of a broader body of research that's showing that coffee is actually tied to longevity in a few different ways. And they don't really know why. They think that there's something about coffee that can lower inflammation, that can prevent cell damage, helps you with memory, those sorts of things. So here's my takeaway from that study is sometimes they get a little bit worried, again, because of social media. Everybody's telling you something, you do something wrong, what it's going to do? It's going to disrupt your hormones, and then you're going to be depressed, and then you're going to have to do a parasite cleanse and then you're going to have to drink a certain type of water, and then you're going to have to walk outside and stare at the sun in the middle of the morning. So I get all in my head about all sorts of things. So sometimes I'm like, I drink coffee in the morning, and then I kind of want like iced coffee in the afternoon. And then that could be bad. But here's what I'm going to say. That's fine. I'm not drinking 7 cups of coffee a day. And if I have the question and I need it to get to the end of the day, I'm going to say, at Smarter News, I saw that there's a study about longevity, and I'm actually doing this for my health. So here's your permission to watch a Broadway play, get a little bit of culture, have a little philosophical conversation about journalism and advocacy and a free press and a free society. Think about, ways that we could be better as a community to support our moms, and enjoy a cup of coffee and congratulate yourself for making it through another week and doing the best that you possibly can. That is my pep talk for you today. That's what I'm going to take it all the way to the bank. All right, I think we've done a lot of good work here. I know this is a longer segment, but it felt like I wanted to make sure that we shared a lot of what you had to say about the study. And I'm excited for you to see what you think about this play. If you can't watch it this weekend, I'm sure you can stream it again, or record it, or whatever the kids are doing these days that I don't really know about with technology, Chat GPT. I don't know. You could do all of it. All right, guys. Thank you for your support of quick, concise, nonpartisan news. Get yourself a great cup of coffee. By the way, it didn't work if you had decaf. You needed the real stuff. Sorry. Get yourself a good cup of coffee. Congratulate yourself. And thank you again for believing in what we're doing here together, building a solution in news. I'm Jenna. Have a great weekend. Bye.